and welcome back to Eat Your Feelings. Today I'm so excited because we are going to be making a beautiful soup. I call it a fall harvest soup. There's so many vegetables in here, it tastes delicious, and we're gonna get started. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to heat my broth. And I'm using organic vegetable broth for this. You could use beef broth, you could use whatever you want, and sometimes if you're really watching your sodium, you could even use a low sodium bone broth. That would work quite well. But today we're gonna be using a vegetable broth. So I will go ahead and get that started. Now this is the kind of soup that, you come home, you see what's in your fridge, and you just kind of whip it together and throw some stuff in. This shouldn't take you more than maybe 10-20 minutes at the most to put together. So we have our broth going, and I want to season it a bit. So I'm going to use some fresh organic thyme. Thyme is so versatile. I use it in so many things, and I just love it. And it keeps in the fridge for quite a while. I think I've had this in there for almost a week, and it still looks pretty good and smells wonderful. So I'm gonna throw some of this in here. That should be plenty. And then I'm gonna add a bay leaf. It's for some flavor. Now, for this particular soup today, I have cut up some zucchini, probably about a half of a large zucchini, and I left the skin on purpose for a little bit of extra fiber. It's organic, and I would say I diced it. You can make it a little bit tinier if you want. You could probably shred it if you'd like as well. I also cut 2 ears of corn, fresh, organic, non-GMO corn. And you can use canned corn if you'd like, but I find that tastes so much fresher if you can get your hands on some fresh corn. And then I also chopped up about 2 medium-sized carrots, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put these in a large pan along with our pulverized onion. I have some picky eaters in my home who don't like chunks of onion, even if it's diced. So we usually end up pulverizing it. So you get the flavor, but you don't really see the onion. Compromise, right? So put that in here. And this particular recipe, I am using about 1 3/4 cup of frozen okra, and then about a half cup, maybe a little more than a half cup of frozen lima beans. So I'm gonna pour these in here too. Okay, now okra is super great for your digestion. I'm gonna add a little water to this. I'm not using any oil to cook this. I'm gonna put it on medium-low. This is gonna probably cook for about 20 minutes or so. We want it pretty soft. And then we can add it to our broth. Okra is really great for the digestion. It's got that slippery mucilage sort of feel to it. It's really healing for the gut. And so, it's a great thing to add to soups and stews, that kind of a thing. And then lima beans, I don't use a lot of beans in my cooking. I'm not a big fan of legumes. However, lima beans have, the good amount of fiber and a little bit of protein. They're really great, a lot of vitamins. And so if you can tolerate them, just a little goes a long way. Now, for a lot of people, they can't really tolerate beans. They get bloated, they get gassy. So taking a digestive aid can really help with that. And if that's you, then I'll put a link below for a digestive aid that I really like. Now, a lot of times it's people with type O blood who are not really great at digesting beans. And I've talked to a lot of my clients, and kind of gathered research after I read the blood type diet book years ago. I was like, well, is there any truth to this? And I do find that there are some truths to eating according to your blood type. And, again, type O, they're pretty notorious for not being able to digest beans. So if that's you, a digestive aid can really help, or sometimes we just have to stay away from the beans. And then, you could put something else in there instead, or you could just leave them out. It's fine. I happen to have them in my freezer. Also, it's a great way to sneak in veggies for your picky eaters, just to, get some extra fiber in there. And by the way, this is a soup. If you have problems going to the bathroom, this is a soup that will help move things along. So, keep that in mind. And if you have constipated people in your family that you're feeding, or maybe it's you, adding some eggplant to this recipe can also really help speed things along. Some diced eggplant usually is great for stimulating bowel movements. So yeah, keep that in mind. What I am going to be adding to this soup also is some ground beef. Now this is lean, 93% lean, grass-fed Wagyu beef that I did get at Whole Foods. And why not get the high quality stuff? It tastes great. You could add different types of protein to the soup, but I find that the beef really has a great flavor. So I'm gonna add that to the broth. And just let that simmer. It would help if I turned it on. So I'm gonna put that on maybe a 4. Stir that up. And I'm gonna add some spices. Now I like things just a little bit spicy, so I'm gonna put some crushed red pepper. It never comes out right. It's too slow. Let's see what we can do about that here. A little goes a long way. And then I'm going to add some basil. You could crush some garlic if you'd like. I'm on a schedule here, so I'm just going to use some garlic powder. And a little bit of onion powder too. You can use whatever spices you like. And we'll stir that up. I'm not going to salt right now because the broth is fairly salty. So yeah, 540 milligrams per serving. So, we're gonna really try not to add any extra salt. If you're on a low salt diet, you can get the low sodium broth, or you can use bone broth. Either one is a good option, but I am gonna add some pepper. Now let's check our veggies. Looking good. A lot of people make soups with a bunch of oils, but if we're detoxing, or we're trying to lose weight, or we're trying to reduce inflammation, we don't really need a bunch of extra oils. I'd rather eat the actual fat than the oil, because oil is kind of some empty calories. If we put a little avocado on top, however, we're gonna get some healthy fat and we're gonna get a lot of extra fiber. So, and vitamins and so forth. So I just kind of reserve oils for other things. I don't really like them in my soups, if that makes sense. Also, we're gonna have some fat cook off from the ground beef, even though it was 93% lean, it's still 7% fat. So we're gonna get some flavor and some fat in the soup from that. So while this is cooking, I wanted to take a moment and talk about Breast Cancer Awareness Month, right? That's where we are here in October. This is a recipe that's really anti-inflammatory, and that's what we want to look at with breast cancer prevention. I'm all about awareness. Awareness is great. Yes, we need to be aware, but let's go the next level. Let's talk about prevention, right? How do we prevent breast cancer? Well, no one has all the answers, but we have a few. Research shows us that We really need to stay away from processed meats, right? So that's like deli meats, a lot of bacon, sausages, that kind of thing. Now, when I eat those things, I eat them on occasion, but I do buy the uncured, nitrate-free. It's gonna be just way better overall on your system to stay away from all the added chemicals and preservatives, that kind of thing. But still, that being said, I try not to eat those things very often, right? So sticking to the ground beef, we really want to watch excess carbohydrates and sugars, right? Which are going to jack up our insulin, make us insulin resistant, gain weight, and all of those things are linked to cancer, right? Artificial flavors, colors, sweeteners, all of those things, which by the way are also obesogens, right? And obesogens are chemical compounds that stay in the body and actually make us retain weight. So we want to avoid those as much as possible. With breast cancer, especially estrogen positive breast cancers, we really want to make sure our hormones are balanced, right? And a lot of times it's the imbalance of hormones that can trigger cancer growth. And so the best way for a woman to do that is, number one, keep her weight under control, because if we're more than 5 pounds overweight, your body has about a 5-pound cushion. Anything over that, your fat cells are going to be producing bad hormones, and those are usually bad estrogens. And so we want to avoid that. And by the way, fat isn't something that just sits on your body inertly. Your fat is actually an organ in and of itself, and it actually makes hormones. So we want to be very aware of that fact, right? So keeping our weight under control, making sure our blood sugar is under control. And that's, not eliminating carbs. I'm not a big fan of the keto diet or anything like that, but making sure we're not overeating carbohydrates, because that's going to lead to that insulin resistance. It can lead to PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, right? And that's where we have all kinds of issues with fertility, with our menstrual cycle, with hair growth, with acne, sometimes hair loss, all kinds of things. So we want to avoid that. We want to make sure we exercise and move. One of the best ways to get bad estrogens out of our system is to exercise. One of the best ways to cleanse our liver, besides eating healthy, eating clean, anti-inflammatory, is to move, is to get out there and move. So keeping that in mind. The other thing we really want to think about is how our body detoxes. Now, this is something not very many people talk about. Pause, I'm going to stir. Woo, this is looking good. So some of us detox way better than others. And really the only way to find out how your body detoxes is to get a test. The only test that I'm aware of that measures how well your body detoxes bad hormones is the Dutch test. And I will put a link below. The Dutch test is way ahead of its time. It measures metabolites in your urine, right? Because a lot of times you go to the doctor and they measure blood levels of hormones. They go, oh yeah, you're fine, your levels are fine. It's really oversimplified that way. There are so many nuances. For instance, I think there's like 9 to 11 different types of estrogen. Can you believe it? And your doctor's office measures 1. That's not okay. That's a very incomplete profile. And so when we get something like the Dutch test, not only does it measure all of our hormones, our androgens, our progesterone, all of that, it will measure how your body actually detoxes out the bad estrogens, or the ones that are linked to cancer. And so then you can take a look and see, okay, how well are my detox pathways working? If they're not working well, what can I do to enhance them? So, we talk about detox in this culture all the time, but a lot of people just genetically, they don't detox very well. And, it's my hypothesis that those are the people that often go on to develop cancers. So while this is cooking, I'm gonna dice up our avocado. And, that was fun. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed this lately, but I've noticed every time I cut into an avocado, I never know if it's good, if it's bad. This one came out perfect. But a lot of times it looks good on the outside, you cut it open and it's all brown and yucky on the inside. I don't know what that is, but it's been happening to me more and more. So I'm really excited that I have a very very beautiful avocado. And for those of you who've watched my other episodes, you know that I'm crazy about avocados. The fiber content, the vitamin profile, I mean, they have such a mild flavor. They're easily accessible for most people. We have to be careful when we're cutting, right? We take our time. But yeah, so anytime I can add a little bit of extra avocado to a meal, I do it. And that's another way to get rid of your bad hormones, is to make sure you're eliminating properly. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means exactly, there is a scale, and I will link it in the comments. It's called the Bristol scale. And, you know, it shows you what your poo should look like. And the ideal is number 4s. But a lot of times, and when I talk to my clients, I make them rate their poo. Hardly anyone is getting number 4s. Now, you might go to the bathroom every day and think, I'm not constipated. I go to the bathroom every day. However, if it doesn't look like a number 4, if it's too dry, if you're pooping rabbit pellets, you're still constipated, even if you're going every day. And if you don't get that under control, what happens is the bad estrogens that your body is trying to eliminate will get recirculated back into your body. And that is not okay. So we want to make sure we are going to the bathroom at least once a day. Now, some people think they're great because they're going 3 and 4 times a day, but then their stools are too loose and they're not absorbing enough nutrients, and that's a problem as well. All right, we're going to take another look here. Yeah, this is cooking down really nicely. So look at the Bristol scale and rate yourself, and, you know, ask your family members too. It can be great dinner time discussion, right? How are you doing, kids? And where do you need to be? But yeah, it's important. And so avocado, other high fiber foods can really help with that process. Making sure you're drinking enough water. Caffeine is so dehydrating. And you know what else is really dehydrating? Fizzy drinks, not even just sodas, just sparkling water can be super dehydrating. Why? Because it's carbon dioxide bubbles. And it dries you out. Teas can dry you out. Teas are astringent and they can be drying. So a lot of times if you're like, I'm drinking all this fluid, I'm drinking tea, sometimes it can backfire. And then you're not having number 4s. So, fiber is really good for that. Now, other ways to get fiber: berries, sweet potatoes, things like broccoli, apples have some fiber, those kinds of things. But really important, and I think I've said in other episodes, women 25 grams a day of fiber, no less. Men 38. You need even more fiber. Now, a lot of times people say, I eat all these whole grains, I'm getting my fiber. If you look at the labels, it's not that much bang for your buck. And a lot of times they say, if any food has more than 2.5 grams of fiber, it's a high fiber food. It's really not. It's really not. You need to be 6, 7, 8 grams of fiber per serving is really what we're looking at for meals. And anyway, so keep that in mind. Now, our broth is looking pretty good. This doesn't take long, folks. It's already looking great. And it's nice when we have things cooked up in advance, right? Or at least cut up in advance. So I know it's sometimes hard to do that, but if you can get a little bit of a head start, then you can just whip this stuff together. Now, you could also put this in a crock pot, do it in the morning, and then you'd come home and then it'd be ready, and that would be fine too. All right, let's see. Okay. I think this looks pretty right. Now this is gonna be the tricky part. Scooping this in. So I'm sure you know someone, hopefully not you have struggled with breast cancer, but I'm sure you know someone who've had a friend or a family member, And you see what they go through, right? And it's no joke, it's terrible. And even though women are living longer and the survival rate is higher, a little bit higher these days, it's still an arduous journey to go through. If you have to go through any kind of chemo or radiation or multiple surgeries, mastectomies, lumpectomies, all of it, it's completely life-changing. And then there's always the fear, is it going to come back? And sometimes it does come back. I had a very close family member pass away by age 42 of an estrogen-positive breast cancer. And, she was diagnosed. They did all kinds of preventative measures. They said, okay, let's do all the chemo, all the radiation, just to make sure it doesn't come back. And then 2 years later, it came back and it was everywhere, in her bones and her brain and her liver. It was so devastating, honestly. And 42 is way too young to go. Now, one of the things that she did when she was diagnosed is she went on a vegan diet. And I wasn't a fan, but it was her decision. And I offered to help with nutrition and all of that, but she had read a book and was convinced that going vegan was the way to go. But unfortunately, her idea of being a vegan was still being able to drink Starbucks lattes and things. It's like, oh, yeah, those are just so inflammatory. And in the end, she didn't make it, and it was so sad. And I always wished that maybe she had done a Dutch test or, figured out her detox pathways, and it just wasn't on her trajectory, and that's okay. We can't save everybody, right? But I'm talking to you, and especially, like I said, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. First of all, always do your self-exams, right? But by and large, look at everything that's going on in your day-to-day life. Look at your cosmetics, look at your shampoos, look at your toothpaste, look at your spices, all the chemicals. Are you cooking your food in plastics? Even pumping gas. If you're a woman, pumping gas has been linked to breast cancer. So that's scary too, making sure you're wearing a glove or, cleaning your hands right after you pump gas. Don't touch the gasoline, don't let it get on you, those kinds of things. It's almost turning into a full-time job now to figure out how not to get cancer. Doesn't it seem that way? It seems that way to me. Anyway, this is looking fantastic. I am going to stir and then give a little taste test. See what we might be missing. It looks like it's hot. It's delicious. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt though, just a little. Now, a lot of people might make some bread or cornbread to go with this. I won't, and here's why. Too many empty carbs. Bread is a pretty inflammatory food. There's not enough bang for your buck in a piece of bread. Now, on occasion, maybe a little bit's fine. I am a gluten-free nutritionist. Again, gluten, even for people who don't show gluten sensitivity on a sensitivity test or a blood test, it's still inflammatory because the wheat grain was shortened in the early part of the 20th century. And it just became inflammatory. That's why a lot of people can go to Europe and eat bread and eat flour and pastries, and they don't have the same reactions that they do here in this country, in the United States, because the wheat is different. So here, by and large, I just say, we just don't need it. And if you're already struggling with your weight, eating bread is just like eating empty calories. Your body's not gonna burn it. So why bother? But make a hearty soup. You could have some fruit, one of my berry recipes, or something for dessert. But this is a hearty soup, and especially once we add the avocado, you really shouldn't need a side carbohydrate. You're gonna have plenty of carbohydrates with the beans and the vegetables. Okay, So the soup is looking fantastic. I'm gonna turn it to low. And I'm gonna serve a little up. Now, this is how we're gonna make this soup come alive. We are gonna add a little bit of shredded pecorino romano cheese. Now this is goat's milk Italian cheese. It's very pungent. It's a lot like Parmesan, but in my opinion, it has a better flavor. And me growing up in an Italian home, this is what we had on the table. We used Romano cheese for just about everything. We always put it on soups. So I'm gonna put a little bit of that for flavor with the avocado. And there we have it, a beautiful fall harvest soup that is packed full of fiber, vegetables, nutrients, antioxidants, protein, and it's delicious. I'm dying to take a bite, but it's too hot. I'm gonna have to wait. So while I'm waiting, I just wanna reiterate, if you have any health issues, if you have cancer that runs in your family, do yourself a favor and get the Dutch test. I will put a link down below. And take a look at how you're detoxing. And try out my 30-day detox. You won't be sorry. I mean, not only will you lose pounds if you need to, you will feel so much more energized, clear-headed. You're gonna wake up just refreshed and feeling like you want to seize the day. I mean, we get the caffeine out, we get the sugar out, we get the alcohol out, and we put all the good stuff in. So if that resonates with you, click the link below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, by the way. As always, hug yourself from me, and we'll see you next time.